Immigration and compassion. Believe it or not, these two things are tied together. And that's what we're going to be talking about today on the Rich Carroll program. I want to thank you guys for joining me. We're going to start off this conversation by talking about one of the main drivers with the left on immigration policy, and many other policies for that matter. But one of those main drivers being compassion. It's no secret that the left, they tend to think more on empathy and emotions when trying to deal with issues, whereas the right will try and think of a more reasoned, a more logical perspective. And I'm not trying to knock anybody, I'm just saying how things are in regards to the left and the right. So for example, someone on the left might tell you that sanctuary cities are compassionate because deporting somebody, you might be ruining their way of life that they've built here in this nation. They could have friends, they could have family, they could have a job, and to deport them would uproot all of that. But a sanctuary city makes a way for them to maintain the lives that they've built here. A border wall, another thing. A border wall isn't compassionate because it prevents people who are fleeing things like crime and corruption from their country. It prevents them from obtaining freedom in our country. It's a symbol of oppression. Somehow, a border wall would send the message that immigrants aren't welcome here. They're just looking for a better way of life, and to deny them that is not who we are as a society. Can you see that being arguments from a compassionate standpoint? But I would ask, is it more compassionate to support policies that encourage illegal immigration? Or is it more compassionate to support policies that encourage legal immigration? Let me explain. If illegals think that they can make it to a sanctuary city where they don't feel they have to live in fear of deportation, wouldn't that be a driving factor of getting across the border? Now think about what they have to go through to get here. In San Antonio, this is a recent story, an estimated 100 illegal immigrants piled into the back of a semi-trailer, and they ended up in San Antonio from the border, and they stopped in a Walmart parking lot. When they were discovered, the initial report said there were 8 people dead. That number has since rose to 10 people, but the fact remains that there were 10 people who died from being trapped in the back of a trailer. Now, you're looking at a trailer that was 100 plus degrees. To my knowledge, there was no water in the back of that trailer, and although it did have an AC unit, it was broken. Does that sound like compassion? Who remembers back in 2014 when all the illegal immigrant children were flooding across our border without their families? And these children, they were subject to horrific experiences, sometimes at the hands of coyotes. Now, I'm not talking about the kind of coyote that puts himself in a catapult and launches himself over a border wall looking for the roadrunner. I'm talking about human smugglers. And Reuters has one such account. This girl, she was 16 years old, and she claimed she was raped at the hands of a human smuggler. And she said there was one day she went without any food at all. Think about those experiences. Is that compassionate? Now think if they had come legally. Would they have been subject to those same experiences? You see, I think that immigrants who enter our country legally, they not only better ensure their safety, but they give themselves advantages in making a better life here. Think about this. Who will fare better? An illegal immigrant who doesn't know English, yet comes across our borders. He's then put in a community where he's isolated from everybody else, the rest of the English-speaking world, and he can never better himself because he's inhibited. Now think of a legal immigrant who assimilates to our culture, learns our laws, learns our language, and then they can really achieve whatever they put their mind to. They can take part in the American dream. Whether we agree or not on how we're going to solve immigration reform, can we at least agree that securing our border and enforcing our immigration laws are not only acts of national security, but a way to show compassion to the very immigrants we claim we want to help? On the same train of thought, do you remember Kate Steinle of San Francisco? You might recognize the name. She was 32 years old, and she was killed on a San Francisco pier by an illegal immigrant. Now, here's the kicker. The illegal immigrant who took her life had been deported 5 times and had 7 felonies on his record. A more recent experience was a 65-year-old woman in Portland, Oregon. She was, get this, sexually assaulted by an illegal immigrant who had been deported 20 times. Not only was he a meth addict, but he also assaulted another woman before finally being caught. In fact, KGW8 News reports that Multnomah County, which is where Portland, Oregon is located, does not hold illegals for immigration and customs. So instead of holding illegals, they release them. And this is what's known as a sanctuary city. They get an illegal immigrant and they won't detain them until ICE can get there and take care of them. So they just release them. Sanctuary city. Wouldn't the more compassionate thing to do, wouldn't that be to stiffen immigration laws and punish these types of illegal immigrants who are crossing our borders and harming American citizens? Well, if you agree that that's the more compassionate action to take, I have some updates for you going out at the federal level, and I also have some ways that you can get involved. So I want to begin that there are 3 bills that have passed the House of Representatives and are currently sitting in the Senate waiting to be passed before going to President Trump's desk. The first one I want to tell you about is H.R. 3004. This is also called Kate's Law, and it's named after Kate Steinle, who I just told you about in San Francisco. This bill would, if somebody gets deported and comes back, I believe it says that they have committed a felony now and they will be put in prison for 10 years. So if the guy that killed Kate Steinle had been caught the second time, then he'd be rotting in prison versus out on a pier killing innocent Americans. There is a Senate version of this bill, which is S-45, and it is written by Senator Ted Cruz. There's also H.R. 3003, which is the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act. Now, this would cut off federal grants to sanctuary cities. And believe it or not, the Daily Signal says that this is something the Department of Justice is already working on. They tell us that Attorney General Jeff Sessions is denying, quote, sanctuary jurisdictions federal grant money if they don't work with the proper authorities to deal with illegal immigration. The third one is actually part of a spending bill for fiscal year 2018, and it's called the Make America Secure Appropriations Act. Now, this legislation has a provision in it that provides, I believe the number is $1.6 billion to begin a border wall. Now, if you contact your legislators and you are in support of a wall, then tell them not only to pass this legislation, but tell them to complete the entire border wall. And just kind of on a personal note, I don't really think it's Mexico's responsibility to be paying for the wall. So I think this is a step in the right direction of the federal government to erect a wall and help stem the tide of illegal immigration. But if you want to debate that, that's another discussion for another day. So I know that this is that people on the right are not the only ones concerned with securing our border and enforcing immigration laws. I mean, the concept behind it is the very concept that causes us to go lock our doors at night. And I know that there are people on the left that they are concerned about our borders as well. So if you think of immigration in terms of compassion, then I just ask you to consider the points that I've put forth and the way I see immigration and compassion. And I also encourage you guys to be involved and contact your legislators. Tell them to support the mentioned legislation and all the information, all the stories, all the bills, and even ways to get in contact with your legislators. All of that is shared in my information section. So guys, please utilize that if you want to. I want to thank you for joining me tonight, guys. Once again, please like and follow my Facebook page, and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube page as well. And if you see something on here that you like, please feel free to share it. Thanks for joining me. I'm Rich Carroll. Thank you. God bless.